Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about Ezekiel Elliott and Melvin Gordon, as both of them are currently holding out for this coming season. As of right now, neither of them have reported to training camp, so that brings up many questions when it comes to the fantasy football community and the implications going into the season. I know many of you are drafting in the coming weeks, so we have to know what to do strategically with the likes of Ezekiel Elliott and Melvin Gordon. So I'm going to talk about that specifically. But before we get into that, as per usual, I'm going to go ahead and thank everybody who's continued to support the channel. If you haven't already, click that like button, click that subscribe button, click the notification bell to know when my latest videos are out. Right there, we have Tyron Smith. He's looking a little upset. Maybe it's because Zeke hasn't showed up yet. All right. Also, if anybody is interested, I have recently launched my Patreon. On my Patreon, you can find all new content that is just purely exclusive to Patreon supporters. Things like my 2019 draft kit, being able to play in the league with me this coming season, a full-fledged league, not a best ball, a full league. Also, more content as in different videos that you won't be getting here on YouTube, as well as live streams, questions and answers that I will not be answering on YouTube, stuff like that. So the link is in the description for my Patreon if you're interested in checking it out. So thank you. And for those of you who have already supported on Patreon, much appreciated. Love the support. Can't thank you guys enough. Hey everybody, how's it going? All right, so we're talking about Ezekiel Elliott and we're going to talk about Melvin Gordon, but specifically let's talk about Zeke, because his fantasy value going into the 2019 season, honestly, pretty much sits around that number 1 or 2 running back coming off the board. And to be honest, I would probably take him as my number 1 running back if he was at training camp right now. So here's the situation. Currently, Ezekiel Elliott went to Mexico. He's in Cabo. You can see around me, technically, not really in Mexico, but he's somewhere on a beach. He's relaxing. He's working out. You know, he's fantastic. No big deal. The issue is, when it comes to fantasy football going into the 2019 season, if we're going to use our number 1 overall pick or our top 4 selection on a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, we want to know for a fact that he is going to be playing an entire 16-game season, because we don't want another Le'Veon Bell situation. Now, I know that when I bring that subject up, many of you already, you cringe a little bit because it hurts. Because last season, many of you had Le'Veon Bell as one of your first 2 picks, and last season he didn't play a single down. And it hurt many fantasy teams. In fact, probably lost you a season unless you were quick enough to get James Conner off of the waiver wire, unless you already had him handcuffed, which would be the smarter thing to do. Now, let's talk about Ezekiel Elliott. What has he done in the last couple seasons? In the past 3 seasons, he's been ridiculous when it comes to fantasy. The guy's averaged 19.46 fantasy points per game in his 3-year career thus far in half-point PPR. Last season, he was the leading receiver of the Dallas Cowboys. He really developed his game. Instead of just being that one-dimensional back that sometimes caught a couple screen passes here and there, a couple dump-offs, he was really using the passing game at an accelerated rate, and it absolutely helped the entire offense, and it helped his fantasy value as we approach the 2019 season. He won the rushing title in his rookie season. He won it last season, and he's just been amazing. Ezekiel Elliott is one of the best running backs in the NFL, and as of right now, probably a top prospect in fantasy football. So where exactly do we go from here? The issue is we don't want to be burnt by a guy like Ezekiel Elliott. And if you're drafting within the next couple of days, this is where it hurts the most. The big date and the big number that we're looking for is August 6th. Now, the thing about August 6th is that is the last day that Ezekiel Elliott has to show up and report to camp. Otherwise, he will be forfeiting his accrual for his undrafted or his unrestricted free agency by the end of his 5th year. Now, what exactly does that mean? Going into his 4th year right now, he's currently under contract. It is his rookie contract. Also, the Dallas Cowboys have already picked up his 5th year option, which all rookies typically have who are first-round picks. They have that 5th year option that allows them to stay under contract in that rookie deal. So as of right now, he is locked down for the next 2 seasons. So if he does not show up by August 6th, he is going to not have that accrual to give him his 4th season, which means that by the end of his 5th year, he cannot be a unrestricted free agent. So every time he holds out, that date gets further and further away from him. So he has to show up If Ezekiel Elliott wants to, be a Cowboy for life, sure, he wants to be paid. That's a fact, and I respect it. The guy needs to be paid. He's been incredible. I mean, there's DeMarcus Lawrence on the Dallas Cowboys, the defensive end. He's getting paid $21 million a year. You can't tell me DeMarcus Lawrence is more important to this team than Ezekiel Elliott. But the running back market as of right now, it's just different. It's just how it is. People think that running backs are a dime a dozen. You can pick up anybody and put them into the lineup. Well, when they put Tony Pollard and Alfred Morris in this backfield this season, when Ezekiel Elliott decides not to show up, they're going to be hurting and they're going to feel the difference. Similar to what they felt when Ezekiel Elliott was out and Darren McFadden and Alfred Morris tried to pick up the slack in, 2 seasons ago when he was suspended. So it's a little rough. So here's the thing about Ezekiel Elliott. When we approach him in drafts, as of right now, if you're picking before August 6th, understand the inherent risk. Understand that he may not play the entirety of this season. There is a potential of that. There is a potential that he holds out and, demands a trade. Similar to Melvin Gordon, which we'll get into in a little bit. But understand that when you draft Ezekiel Elliott, you should also be looking to lock down his handcuff, right? That it has to happen. If you don't have his handcuff, you're going to get potentially screwed over and your entire season's over because you've wasted that number 1 overall pick in which you could have gotten any other guys like Saquon or Alvin Kamara or Christian McCaffrey who are just as reliable and can be just as good as him in fantasy this coming season. Now, obviously, there are the specifics of Ezekiel Elliott's season. I mean, Travis Frederick is coming back, the all-pro center who was out for the entirety of last season because he was diagnosed with that disease. He's coming back this season. So having 3 all-pro offensive linemen in front of you, this is probably the best offensive line he's played behind in his entire career. Their strength of schedule in terms of the running back, they have the 4th easiest schedule. And Ezekiel Elliott, I mean, he should be incredible this season if he decides to show up to camp. But as of right now, I personally, if by August 6th he does not show up, don't expect him to play. Do not draft Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, it's going to be a mess. Expect for him to probably demand a trade at that point. But if you're drafting in the next couple of days, understand the inherent risk and understand that you need to lock down his handcuff if in fact you are taking him. I personally, if Ezekiel Elliott drops to me, if he somehow drops out of the first round because of this information in the next couple of days, of course I'm taking him. I think at that point, I'm willing to take the risk because it's a boom or bust kind of thing. And personally, I play in so many leagues, I'm willing to take those kind of risks. But I know many of you, if you play in your home league and you're playing for bragging rights and that big cash prize, a guy like Ezekiel Elliott puts that in risk to 100%. Okay, so that's Ezekiel Elliott. August 6th, guys. That's the big date. If he doesn't report by then we're in some trouble here. All right, and also you see that right there. You see, come home. The Dallas Cowboys need you, baby. Come on. All right. Anyway, so let's talk about Melvin Gordon. So the other day, Melvin Gordon, similar to Ezekiel Elliott, is holding out. But the other day, he was offered a $10 million per year contract for an allotted amount of years by the Chargers. They have enough cap space to afford that this year. If they give him $10 million per year, maybe in the upcoming years, maybe like 12, 13, give him some guaranteed cash here and there, he should be fine. Unfortunately, Melvin Gordon was given the offer and instantly rejected it and said, no, thank you. I want more money per year. Also, because you haven't met my demands, I would like to request a trade. So him and his agent, they requested a trade. And now the Chargers sit, they pushed all the chips to the center and they're all in. So it's up to the Chargers in the next couple, coming days to either increase the contract and or trade Melvin Gordon. Because if he's not going to sign and if he's not going to play, what's the point of him being on the roster? I mean, you might as well trade him, get some sort of commodity at him, maybe bring in another running back and see what you can get. Now, here's the difference between Melvin Gordon and Ezekiel Elliott. Melvin Gordon's potential this coming season, whether he's on the Chargers or whether he's traded to another team, is still very high because there are a lot of offenses in the NFL as of right now that would love the services of Melvin Gordon and will 100% make him an RB1 in 2019. So I think his value in approaching and drafting Melvin Gordon is 150% easier than approaching a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, who could just hold out the entire season. So here's the thing. Melvin Gordon, it really depends where he lands, but I've been kind of hearing a couple of the options that have been thrown around. I personally love the idea of him going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, with Peyton Barber, which is Ronald Jones, right? If you can put Melvin Gordon in a Bruce Arians offense in which they run a lot of shotgun zone, and I'm sure they want to pass the ball to the running back. You guys saw what he did with David Johnson in 2016, right? One of the best fantasy seasons by a running back that we'll probably ever see, unless, the league, I don't know. But if he can end up on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not bad. Other ideas that have been thrown around, the Houston Texans going in there, replacing Lamar Miller, that's not a bad idea if they're willing to pay the contract. The team that is going to have to trade for him has also got to put down the money, right? They're going to have to offer him $13, $14 million a year. I think that's exactly what Devontae Freeman got a couple seasons back. Recently, Todd Gurley, David Johnson was signed last season. These guys have set the market, Le'Veon Bell, and Melvin Gordon believes he's just as good as him, so he believes he needs to be paid just as much as them, $15 million. If you're willing to shell it out for a guy that has dealt with injuries in the past, you got to be able to commit to that, especially if you're going to trade for him. Now, there are other ideas that were thrown around. If, in fact, the Chargers wanted to acquire more running back help in exchange for Melvin Gordon, the idea of trading him to the Jacksonville Jaguars were thrown around for Leonard Fournette. Now, you'd be trading one running back for another. Both of them have inherent risk because of their injury history. On top of it, Leonard Fournette would completely rise up draft boards, and so would Austin Eckler, even with the presence of a Leonard Fournette. But either way, those are the couple of ideas that have been thrown around. As of right now, I hope a deal is going to be done with the Chargers. I hope that Melvin Gordon can stay. If, in fact, they end up trading him, so be it. Okay? He's going to end up doing some work for some other organization. He's going to be just fine. But I'm just hoping it ends up perfectly. As of right now, in terms of Melvin Gordon, draft him where he's coming off the board. As of right now, I think he's certainly within the top 10 running backs. I know a lot of people have him a little bit lower at like the 10th spot. At this point, if he falls to you in the draft and he's the best available player, I 100% believe you should be taking him. No matter whether or not he ends up with the Chargers, he's going to be with another team this coming season. Hopefully, within the next couple in the coming weeks, we'll have that all settled. But those are my thoughts on the holdouts as of right now. I know guys like Julio Jones. He's shown up to practice in training camp, even though he wants a new contract. He's going to get a new contract. Michael Thomas, I think, is holding out, but they're getting down to the nitty-gritty, and they're pretty much finalizing that in the next couple of days. So, these running backs, man, the culture of the running back position and how owners feel about them, it's really messing up fantasy. But, it is what it is. These guys want to get paid. They deserve to get paid. And I'm just hoping that everything gets settled in the next couple of days. So thank you, everybody, for watching. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button, click that like button for more content. If you haven't already, check out my Patreon. Much appreciated on all the support. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.